Hello, my name is Luna, and you're listening to Infinite Souls, a podcast for that real talk about consciousness, spirituality, and realizing our infinite potential. Mucho, mucho love and light. Hello, Infinite Souls. Welcome back to another episode. Today I have amazing guest on. Her name is Zofia Rennea Morales. Say hello, Zofia.
Hello, everybody. Hola, mucho gusto.
Yes, me encanta el español. I love it. How do you know Spanish, if you don't mind to share with me?
I was adopted into it in a way, in that I married into a Salvadorian and Mexican family, and all of my in-laws speak Spanish, very few of them speak English. And so, as a surprise for my husband to be, I actually took like half a course of Spanish in college. Then I got to, midterms and it got too busy. And, but the one that got surprised was actually me, because one of the things I did not know about Hispanic guys is they will talk trash about their significant others as part of this "we're being part of the boys" sort of thing. And so we were at this party and he was talking some shit about me, and I'm like, what the heck? He's like, oh, you understood that? I'm like, yes, I did. And we had quite the conversation later.
Wow, see, that's the power of knowing other languages, being expansive.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's a little rough, but it actually got me lots of brownie points with my in-laws. So
Oh my gosh, I bet, because it sounds great, and only for the amount of time that you studied it, you catch on fast.
it's a matter of using it, right? I'm not shy about using it. And so when you use it, people will correct you, right? And you go, okay, so that's how they say that.
Yes.
And you just build on it.
Yes. That's exactly what I used to tell my mom about speaking English. And then about people correcting you. Sometimes they correct you like teasing you, right? And instead of getting mad, take that and learn. That's what I used to.
Yeah,
Instead of getting mad, I'd be like, oh, but actually I want to know how you say it, let me know. So yeah, practice makes perfect.
absolutely. And people will help you when they see that you really want to be speaking their language. I got a ton of encouragement. And then when I went into the workforce, I used it when I was in the Fortune 500
Yeah.
and banking. They put me in the Latin American Command Center. And so I got exposed to Castellano,
Mm.
all the different dialects in Mexico, Argentina. And it's like, oh my goodness.
Wow, yes, it's a lot. Yeah, it's so diverse.
It
I love
really
it.
is.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, well that's great. So I do want to just share with the people a little bit about who Zofia is, your amazing energy. I already love you, and I've just met you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. So let me just read a little bit about who you are, and then I would like to open the floor for you to tell us who you are, a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are now, and
All
about your
right.
spiritual awakening. Let's get into that. All
Yes.
right. So, Zofia Rennea Morales is an award-winning global strategist and former biophysicist. She had it all in a high-powered career, a loving husband, gorgeous properties, adventure, good friends, you name it. She was living the dream until her fast-paced life was screeched to a halt and left her in pieces. And she was living the I'm sorry. She was brought to the edge of death by an undiagnosed chronic Lyme disease and was left bankrupt in every area of her life. Desperate for a miracle, Zofia cried her most heartfelt prayer, I will do anything to get better. This single prayer triggered an unanticipated Kundalini awakening, a spiritual activation that unlocked Zofia's gifts as an intuitive healer and mystic, changing her life completely. Wow, that I want to know more. Let us know.
Well, we'll go back to the pre-awakening me. Let's start there, shall we? Okay, because
Yeah.
I was one of these really rational-minded, scientifically trained. I had the advanced degrees and all this stuff, and then I went into the corporate world and basically got a functional MBA while I was there. And I was very 2 + 2 = 4, causality. There's always a reason for this. Don't give me this unexplainable woo-woo garbage. Okay. Now, I had not gotten to the point of saying there's no God, but I didn't talk to him on a regular basis. I didn't see him as any kind of a personal force in my life, him or her or universe, however you want to refer, right? And in fact, I was pretty anti-religion in a lot of ways because I was raised in such a strict Lutheran upbringing. I mean, there was no dancing, there was no drinking. There was a lot of stuff you just did not do, and if you violated any of those rules, it's like you're going to hell. Okay, and so I was in this church school as a child, and I can remember sitting in class and going, this God that they're teaching me doesn't make any sense, because he's supposed to be love and mercy and all of these things, but he's sending the Israelites to like completely commit genocide in order to take over this quote unquote promised land. Now, if you're this all powerful, merciful God, why would you need to send one group to wipe out the other group in order to give them the land? Aren't there, what do I want to say, more peaceful, less karmically nasty ways to make that happen? And then this whole thing about hell, it was like, are you kidding me? It makes no sense that only people who believe exactly the way that we're believing right here are the ones that go to heaven. Why would a loving God send everybody else to hell? What if they had no chance to learn about this path, right? And what about the people who happened before this path? Were they all damned? Because, looking at what I was raised in, Lutheranism, it kind of started in Germany in the mid, 1600s or 1400s or whatever, and so none of that made any sense to me. So I stepped a long ways away from religion, seeing mostly the human aspects of it that get put into the search for the sacred path, which is really what religion is at its highest and best, is this path into relationship with the divine. And so the farther I got into my scientific training, the farther I stepped away from that, because I didn't feel like I wanted to be part of a system that treats people that way and that sends that message. And so if you'd have asked me prior to my awakening, I'd have said, I'm spiritual and I believe in God, but I'm totally anti-religion.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you on that.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where I was coming from. And so I had a lot of developmental experiences in my youth. I had a husband. I call him a husband because he was practice. And I learned a lot from that relationship in terms of like my self-worth, and that I have to advocate for myself. And even a significant other is not going to look out for my interests as well as I'm going to look out for my own interests. Not that it's a bad thing to have a significant other that will look out for you, but I had one who definitely was not. and that was an important thing to learn also, because he would say, oh, I love you, and no one's going to ever love you the way that I love you. And I finally, at the end of that relationship, came to the conclusion that that was a pretty damn good thing, because what he called love and what I was experiencing were not. It just didn't fit under that same category. And so I learned a lot about what I was looking for in a significant other, as well as what I deserved in my own life. And so there were beautiful things I took out of a very ugly relationship. And this is kind of a theme in my life. It's like I have to go through the really nasty shit, but then there's this beautiful gift on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I was at as I was coming through and going into my career. And when I was in grad school, I met an amazing man who I subsequently married and learned to speak Spanish for.
Yes.
who
Arriba.
has who has been this amazing life partner. You know, people talk about soulmates, and here I'm going to get up on my soapbox for a second. Everybody's like, I want my twin flame. I want my soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with the twin flame is they're like the polar opposite of what you are.
Uh-huh.
And my first relationship, I would have put into that category. In many ways, he was the complete polar opposite of what I was. And in truth, we had very few values that we truly held in common.
Yeah.
Really super hard relationship. Don't get me wrong, learned a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably go do it again if I rewound to start my life over. I probably would do that again because of what I learned through the relationship. But the reward relationship was not this polar opposite, hyper passionate bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's exhausting, I gotta tell you. Absolutely exhausting. And so I like to mention that to people because there are so many women out there who are like, I want this intensely passionate, blah, blah. It's like, oh, okay. But I got to tell you, a life partner is a whole lot more fun. It's more comfortable and it lasts a lot longer.
Yeah, be careful what you ask for, what you wish for. A lot of people, I feel like a lot of the people nowadays, or at least the young people, when they use the word twin flame, they don't even really know what that comes with, the full extent of what it is or
It
means.
just sounds super romantic, right?
Mhm. Yeah, just like, oh, like a Romeo and Juliet type thing, but it's like you realize
Yeah, but let's not hold Romeo and Juliet up as the standard because they both freaking killed
that's
themselves.
what I'm
Okay,
saying. Hey, that's
this
what I'm
is
saying.
a whole nother thing that just needs to be put to the wayside.
Oh
And this
yes.
is not romantic. This is a tragedy. That's what
Mhm.
this is.
That was definitely a tragedy. Yeah. And I personally, I do not put labels on my relationships. Soulmate, twin flame, whatever. I always did believe in soulmates because I felt a soul connection, like deeper than anything that I've ever
Yes.
experienced, like like where you're basically reading each other's minds, you know what I mean? That
Mhm.
kind of shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that I just figure like they're cut from the same cosmic cloth, you know?
Yeah.
So they're
And
like,
it is beautiful to have those relationships. I love having those relationships. I have a few myself. Um, I think my current husband is one of these relationships. Um, but it doesn't always mean you're destined to be with that person in this life either,
mhm,
right? Because I have this amazing connection with other people in my world who are friends or acquaintances or other kinds of partners in my world. But just because I have this intense soul connection
mhm.
doesn't mean that they're necessarily my life partner. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us get lost in the connection and think that because it's so intense, that it's supposed to be here for the duration of your lifetimes together, and that this is the destined one. And that's not always necessarily the case.
Yeah, yeah. It's not, oh, sometimes your soulmate is your pet. Like mine.
Yes, I've had several dogs who are absolutely dialed in to me and what I'm doing, and who are actually here to be part of my path of service.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, yes, yes. They're so healing. Honestly, I think my dog, she is my soulmate. She's a guide in a way.
Yep.
And like I do this thing where I will tell her a command in my head to see if she will hear me.
And
And
she does.
yeah, she does. She does. Oh my God, it almost freaked me out the first time. I was like, okay, wait, this is cool, but kind of freaking me out. Um,
Exactly. So back to kind of my story, and we'll just kind of wind around. We'll touch all kinds of topics on this
yeah, yeah.
story. Um, the thing that was happening with me, like since I was in grade school, was each year it felt like somebody had piled another rock onto my back for me to haul around with me. Um, and I can remember being kind of towards the end of middle school going, I don't know how I'm going to manage perfect attendance next year. That was a big thing for my mom, was you had to show up. And so the only way you got out of school was if you were actually running a fever. Okay. Didn't matter what else was going on. And I can remember being so just crushed down and exhausted and not understanding why it seemed so hard for me, but it wasn't
Mhm.
appearing that way for the people around me. And I made it into, I was between college and grad school and working in a lab for a while. And I remember running across this article where they were talking about Lyme disease, as a matter of fact. And I can remember reading this article and going, oh my God, that's what I have. Now, this was back in the 80s, and Lyme was like this new discovery thing that they were just having. And I got down to the end of the article and it says, but don't worry, because this only comes from this specific little tick that's in the northeast of the United States. And I'd never been to the Northeast. And so I went, oh shit, well, that must not be it. Well, since then, they've discovered that any tick anywhere can carry Lyme disease.
Oh, wow.
And so it probably was, in fact, an accurate diagnosis. My whole being went, this is the thing.
Mhm.
But then I allowed my brain to discount it because of this statement at the end, which was apparently they were overstating what they knew at that point.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Was
so
this before your awakening?
this was a couple of decades before my awakening.
Okay.
And so I kind of discarded that as what it could possibly be. And as I'm going through the years, I'm being evaluated for things like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia and Epstein-Barr and a long list of other things that kind of Lyme mimics.
Mhm.
And no one could find what was wrong with me. And I got into my mid 40s and I was talking to my mom on the phone one afternoon. She's in her 70s at this point, and telling her what was going on and my aches and my pains and my troubles. And she says, you have more health problems than I have. And that really kind of sobered me up. I mean, she's in her mid 70s. And
Mhm.
here I am in my 40s. I'm supposed to be in my prime of life.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what I'm doing. I'm having trouble finding my words. I'm starting to look like I'm getting, early dementia. I'm like,
Wow.
this is not good.
Mm.
And so I this is kind of the point at which the reverse Job starts. If you know the story of Job from the Bible, they took everything away from him to see if he'd lose his faith. My process was the opposite. I started losing everything to see if I could find some faith. And so I'd gotten to the point that I was not employable anymore.
Mm.
My husband was having trouble holding down long-term employment because of the changes in the industry he was in, and had decided he needed to go back to get his MBA in order to be able to make the shift that he needed in his career to stay employed.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to figure out how to send him back to grad school. And he lost the job that he had. They had actually lied to him about the amount of funding that they had when he interviewed. And so we moved across the country, bought a house with the expectation of a 3 to 5 year contract for him. And it was 12 months later. I mean, you haven't even taken care of the relocation costs at this point. And they're like, no, sorry, we're out of money. And so we're sitting here on this brand new piece of property, and what are we supposed to do at this point? There's no income. I can't work. He's lost his job. We're trying to send him back to school. And so we ended up talking to a bankruptcy attorney who was God sent, okay, because he was able to figure out how we could go through the bankruptcy process, hold on to the house as much as we could, and then also pay for my husband to go to grad school, which is like, seriously, we can make this happen? That is cool, because I figured the first thing he was going to tell us was no. And so one of the things that happens when you go through these spiritual pinch points, I use the analogy of cows, because my mom's side of the family was dairy farmers. So I'm kind of familiar with the cow situation. Cows are not tame animals, for those of you who are unacquainted with cows. And so if you want to do something with a cow, you have to actually immobilize it so it can't hurt you while you're doing what needs to happen, whether it's trimming its hooves or giving it wormer or shots or whatever it is. And so how they do this is they take the cows that are in this great big pasture, and then they herd them into a smaller pasture, and then they herd them into a corral, and then they herd them down this chute that literally goes into this head hold where they have to stand still, and their body is kept in one place. And our souls will do this when it wants our attention. And this is what was happening for me. I was being sent down these chutes, and the experience of it is there's only one direction to go. Everyone else is like, there's all these options, but none of the options work out except for this one, and it keeps pulling you forward. And so that was happening with us. Our only option was bankruptcy. Our only option was for my husband to accept a job at like a third of his normal rate of employment. And it was on the other side of the country. And so I reached out to people that we knew in the area there, and we managed to find a place for him to stay, which was much better than what I had asked for, because what I'd asked for was, you know, do you have a spare guest room? Can he have a shelf in your refrigerator and park his car out in front of your house? And what I ended up with was a neighbor who had a condo she was unable to sell, that was in a retirement community that she could not rent out because the bylaws forbid that. And so she said, you know, if you guys paid the utilities on it and he just, you know, keeps track of the upkeep, you know, he can stay there as long as he wants, which is like, whoa, a much, much better situation than we ever anticipated. And at the perfect price point.
Oh my God.
And then the next one thing that happened was after the bankruptcy was filed, I was able to go out and stay with him in the condo, and I was able to find the doctor that diagnosed me with Lyme finally.
Oh, wow.
Which was fabulous, right? It's like, I have the answer. And the guy even had a plan. He had this 2-year plan. It's all these rotating exotic antibiotics and clearing IVs. I'm like, okay. And it has like a 75% success rate, which is decent. I mean, a lot of people will tell you chronic Lyme, yeah, we don't know, all bets are off. So it was good. I liked that. And I called the insurance company to find out how much they were going to cover of it, because I figured they weren't going to cover it all. And the answer that I got back from them was, well, we don't believe in chronic Lyme. Like, isn't that convenient?
Wow.
We don't believe in that. And we will provide you with 2 months of oral antibiotics, and that's it. And oh, by the way, your doctor is no longer in network. Click. Oh, well, wasn't that just what it needed, right?
Wow.
Not even going to pay for the doctor. And so looking at our situation, being in the bankruptcy, my husband working full-time, going to school full-time, and taking care of me, because at this point, I'm kind of useless. I mean, I go into the kitchen to try and make dinner and put together a simple 30-minute meal, and it's 3 hours later that I come out of the kitchen with something, because I'm continually having to remind myself of why I'm there and what it is that I'm doing. and the stage that I'm at in doing it. And it's absolute functional nightmare.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. It
That's
was
so
a
crazy. Yeah, I just said
bad
wow, wow, wow.
situation.
I just
And
say wow.
so, it's in this situation. I'm like, the only answer I can think of at this point is I'm going to call my dad. Now, I was raised by a German and a Norwegian, and they're all about rugged, independent, 18, you're out of the nest and you're on your own. But I figured this would be, I think, the one exception I might be able to convince them of, could you give me a hand? Because I'm in this place. I can't go earn the money at this time. My husband's doing everything that he can possibly do. And I called my father, and the bank of Dad was empty.
Wow.
Yeah. And that night, I went to bed with my husband. I won't say went to sleep because my brain's not allowing me to. Hasn't been going through normal sleep cycles for a while, which makes me even less functional. And I'm laying there, and my brain is acting like this trapped squirrel. It's kind of bouncing off the walls. It's like, well, maybe you could get a job. No, you can't make dinner in a half hour. Well, maybe your husband, well, no, he's hardly sleeping at this point. He's taking care of me. There's just no way he can do anything extra. Well, maybe we can get a loan. No, we're in bankruptcy. We can't get a loan. No one's going to give us a loan. And so I'm just scrambling, trying desperately to find options, and I'm not finding any. There's nothing to be had. And finally, around 3 a.m., I just gave up. There's really no other word for it. I accepted that I did not have the answer to this. And as much as I believed I had a solution right there that was just this far beyond the end of my fingertips, I couldn't reach it. And that was the moment when I said, God, because I do believe he's out there. So I'm going to ask. I will do anything to get better. And I got an answer, like immediately. There was this little voice in the back of my mind that said, really? Anything? And yeah, that's a good point. Anything doesn't have a lot of edges on it.
Anything?
That is a whole lot of territory right there. So I sat with that for a little while and said, okay, anything. What are my edges on anything? And I do not believe that God will ask me to cheat someone, hurt someone, lie, steal, murder, any of that crap. And those are my edges. So, okay, God. And I'm talking to you, God. I will do anything that you want me to. Yeah. And I got my first miracle because I fell asleep. And I woke in the morning with this knowing that I had to go get one of these clearing IVs from the doctor, even though I had no idea how we were going to pay for it. And while I was getting the IV, the doctor actually walked through the infusion room, which he doesn't do. I mean, that's nurses and that's it in there usually. Yeah. And so I waved him over and said, here's the deal. Insurance is out of the picture. I'm in bankruptcy. What are the options for a cash pay patient in these circumstances? And he said, well, if insurance is out of the picture, we have a naturopath who's on our staff here. He does herbs that go along with it, and he's really good with parasitic infections. And Lyme is parasitic infection. His office visits are half the price of mine. And I'm like, okay, that helps. Because the guy I'm talking to is like $200 a visit.
Wow.
And the herbs and stuff that he uses run between $30 and $40 a bottle. I'm like, okay, we can probably find that kind of money. And so I made an appointment to see this other guy. And while I'm sitting in his waiting room, here's another one of these synchronicities that happens. I'm they told me he's running behind. And so, okay, I'm looking for something to occupy myself. And there's an actual book in his waiting area, which you don't see that. It's always these crappy magazines, right?
Mhm.
And so the book got my attention. I picked it up and it says the emotion code on the front. And I thought, ho, 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 hey, 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 because I was raised by a German and a Norwegian. And what we do with our emotions is we shove them down and pretend like that shit did not happen. And it's seriously dysfunctional. And I've done a bunch of talk therapy over the years and not particularly helpful. Okay. So fine, if this guy's got the code to emotions, I want to know. And so I'm starting to read through this book when the owner of the book comes back for it. Oh shit. Now I got to buy the damn book. And so I went and I got the book and I'm working through that. And one of the things he talks about in the book are heart walls. And so I had already determined I had like 500 and some trapped emotions, and a bunch of them were in the heart wall. I knew for a fact I had a heart wall. I didn't even have to muscle test that. I've seen it. I operate with it. I thought everybody had one of these. And so
I built it.
Yeah, I built it. And so I've in this process of taking it down and taking it down. And as I'm taking it down, strange shit starts happening. I mean, strange shit. I was knowing things about the past that I had no way to know. I was seeing things about the future that I had no way of knowing, right? And the scientist in me is writing all of this off. Well, you've got more brain damage than you realized, right? you're super imaginative. And so I'm making all these excuses for these things that are happening. But at the same time, there's some really physically palpable stuff that's happening as well. Like I walk into a store, Walmart or the grocery store, and it's like walking into a rock concert that's at full volume. You just feel this wave of energy coming and pushing and shoving on you as you're going in, and you come out with strange aches and pains and headaches. And I'm like, I do not know what's going on here, right? And so I'm kind of don't know what to do with that. And I'd started to develop this back pain that was like the center of my back, either side of my spine, right at the base of my ribs down there. Okay. And if you know your anatomy, that's where the kidneys sit. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know what's going on with this. I probably need to get a doctor's appointment. And I came home from the grocery store that day, and I see my neighbor helping her husband into the house. They're in their mid-80s. We're in this retirement community. And you can tell he's in a lot of pain. So to heck with the ice cream, we'll go help them in the house. And the wife tells me she's going to go try and get an emergency kidney appointment for him. It's the worst she's ever seen. She's really concerned for him. And so I'm keeping him company in the living room while she's making her arrangements. And there's not really anything you can do to make him comfortable around this pain. Sitting, laying down, doesn't matter. So we're standing in the living room and I'm holding his hands. And I can see his eyes are closed, his lips are moving, and I'm pretty sure he's praying. I know him to be a very devout man. I know she's also been a very devout woman all of her life. He was a minister. She teaches parochial school. Okay, it's a given that he's talking to God. And I'm not especially comfortable with this because I just talked to God 2 weeks ago and have not been back since. And so I decided I wanted to give him some privacy. So I closed my eyes. And when I closed my eyes, in my mind's eye, I saw this little flame, like a pilot light that's on the edge of going out, and it's popping and dancing like they do right before they go. Poof. And I had this knowing that is where his life force is at this time. He's right on the edge of leaving. And I haven't acknowledged who I'm talking to. But in my mind, I said, can we do something about this? And the instant the question came out of my mind, not my mouth, my mind, the flame like roared up into this great big bonfire. And he dropped my hands and he says, "Are you a healer?" And I'm looking around to see who he's talking to, because this is not a possibility that's even entered my awareness in any way whatsoever. And I was fortunately saved from having to answer by his wife coming in and saying, "We got this emergency appointment. We got to leave right now." Okay, great. So we hustle them out into the car, and I go back and hide in my house, trying to convince myself that what happened could not have been what actually happened. And after 2 days or so, I convinced myself that I was a very bad neighbor. I used a whole lot of like Lutheran guilt on myself. You should have checked on them and brought over chicken soup and, the things that good neighbors do, right?
Yeah, that's sweet. Aw.
And so, okay, fine. I screwed up my courage and went next door and tapped on the door. And she opens the door with a big smile on her face, which is like, okay, good. He's not in the hospital. He's not in intensive care.
Yeah.
And she says, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you. Come on in. Jay has so many questions." And I'm thinking to myself, I've got a shit ton myself, right? I got no answers. But I step in and he's kicked back in his Barca-lounger. He's got a drink at one elbow and his remote and his book, and he's fat and happy in his recliner. I said, "How you doing, Jay?" He says, "It was the strangest thing. By the time I got to the doctor's office, I was feeling pretty good. And they put me through all the usual tests, and my kidney function came back normal. Can you believe that?" And the scientist in me had to sit down and shut the fuck up, because conventional medicine tells you kidneys decline is a one-way street. That shit does not get better, except that it did.
Yeah.
And so that was the moment when I realized that the anything I had agreed to was walking in both of these worlds. The world where miracles come and things that are impossible actually happen, as well as the 2 + 2 = 4 mundane world that we live in as well.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. I mean, did you ever ask him what he saw? Just curious.
I did not actually dig into that deeper with him. I was too much of a chicken. I mean, at this point, I haven't got my arms around the full extent of what's going on here yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still half convinced that I've completely lost large parts of my brain. And I haven't even shared with my husband some of the strange stuff that's happening. I haven't told him that I'm starting to see crossed over dead people and angels and all of this other weirdness that has gone on. It took me almost 6 months before I was willing to sit with my husband and go, "Here's some of what's going on with me. And I know you married this really rational, highly educated person."
Oh my God.
But you know what? He took it better than I did. And I have to thank my mother-in-law for that, because she is one of these highly intuitive, dialed in people who talks about Mother Mary bringing you miracles and angels bringing her parking spots and
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And so in a lot of ways, he accepted it a lot more easily than I did, because I was raised with miracles stopped with Jesus Christ, and anybody who tells you different is practicing witchcraft or is of the devil. And that is not what's happening here with me. So it took me a while.
Yeah, no, miracles happen every day, every single day, all around us.
Absolutely. A lot of times we just don't recognize them, or we
Mhm.
go, "Oh, what an amazing coincidence."
Yes.
That is not a coincidence. That is a freaking synchronicity.
Yes, exactly. So this is the Lyme disease. It actually opened up your gifts. The you having having to go through that was
Was what
catalyzed
got me to agree to even entertain it.
to, yes, to, because of your background as a physicist,
A rational scientific
rational science.
person. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, brainiac.
Yeah, a brainiac. I was the uber nerd.
I love it.
So, yeah, it was. Our soul will do this, though. When it's time for you to pay attention to something and you're ignoring it, because I'd had invitations into this world. There were, what do I want to say, scientific doorways I could have chosen to step through, but did not.
Mm-hmm.
And I ignored all of those things. And so at some point, your soul is like, okay, by God, the time is now. And so it will take the thing that you are most attached to.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, it was that big, beautiful, amazing brain.
Yeah.
And my health. And so and my finances and my. There's only one path out of here, and it is the spiritual one.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that's a really common sign that the cause of your problem is perhaps not where you think it is, right? Because I figured my problem was that I was physically ill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I could not work, and it was affecting my mind, and it was, of course, affecting my finances. And all of this goes back to the fact that I am physically ill,
Mm-hmm.
which in a way it does. However, I would not have found my way out of that illness if I had not allowed for a larger solution, which actually came from the spiritual level, which was, you came here for a reason, lady, and you've been ignoring it.
Yes. Yeah, it made you finally look outside of, the mind, get into the spiritual, get into what let me
Yeah.
see.
Well, and I stopped seeking outside of myself for the answer, right? We're trained to do that. So if you've been doing that, I don't want you to give yourself any kind of grief, because society trains us to look outside of us for answers. Go research this, go talk to other people, go do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's not to say that that stuff is not valuable. It is valuable things to do, but your true answers always lie inside of you. And if you are unwilling to sit with yourself, if you are unwilling to allow for the experiences that you're having to actually be the experiences and not write them off as something else, it makes a difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
So my
that's what I learned going through it.
I mean, that is amazing. You learned a lot, and just I commend you for everything that you went through. And it's a blessing to have you here and to just hear your story. Thank you for allowing me to have this space with you.
I am blessed to still be here,
Yeah,
frankly. And
yeah.
I'm grateful for that on a routine basis.
Yes, gratitude is another magnet for miracles. So my next question is, when you found out you had the Lyme disease, how did you heal that on your own for yourself, or did you have help, the doctor that you found?
I went with the naturopath herbalist.
Mhm.
Okay. I have a theory about miracles. Okay. You will get the miracle you can actually accept. Okay. And in that moment, I was not in a space where I could accept that, boom, Lyme disease just gone.
Mhm.
Okay. The miracle that I could accept was that somebody understood uh, enough about Lyme and the herbs that it responds to that that can take it away. And that is what took it away ultimately. It turned out I had a co-infection we had to deal with first before the Lyme was going to go away. So that was a beautiful thing I found out by going to this naturopath.
Mhm.
And it about 3 months with the herbs and the Lyme was taken care of. It was a much longer road to help my body recover from having had the infection this long, though, because Lyme does all kinds of insidious things to your body besides attacking your brain. It's a relative of syphilis, so it has that capability of getting into your brain. But it also will allow other infections to flourish within your system because it acts as an immune suppressor. And so I had like a long-standing yeast overgrowth, which led to some food allergies and a leaky gut and a bunch of things like that. So it's been a longer road to clean all of that up, but at least the Lyme itself is gone,
Yeah.
which makes such a big difference not to be hauling that energetic rock around with me.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you, Spirit. Yes, I'm glad that
Yes,
Lyme is gone. But now we're regulating the body, adjusting, doing some tune-ups to the body, seeing what's, the right
absolutely. And learning what my body wants. For a great many years, I did not partner with my body. My body was a tool to be used and used up and eventually discarded, was kind of my attitude towards it. And that's not a good attitude to hold towards my body, I've discovered. And so I treat it much more as a partner now. I pay attention to what it's asking me for. If it needs more rest, it gets more rest. If it wants more water, it gets more water.
way.
Whereas before I would be like, suck it up. We're pressing on today. I've got commitments.
Yeah.
Now that's not to say that I don't keep my commitments, but I keep my commitment load much lighter so there's more flexibility around it. And that allows me to be more graceful with myself.
Yeah, we don't let ourselves rest much. A lot of people, they have, I call it internalized capitalism.
Do
But
tell.
it
This is a new term. I'm interested. What?
it's the truth, because society as a whole has been built and capitalistic and in a way male oriented, as we all know, right? And
Very male oriented,
and
yes.
that is just ingrained in you, and since you're a child, because you're observing it, you're a sponge when you're a child and you see it
Yep.
everywhere. And those neural pathways in your brain are just there now and they're deeply ingrained, so you have to do the unlearning of that because it's all internal now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's internalized capitalism, because you guilt yourself over resting. But if you actually rest and don't bring the guilt in, then you can actually
You
receive,
can actually rest when you rest.
yes, you can receive full benefits, actually rest. And like you're when you were sharing your story, that you said you fell asleep and then you woke up knowing that you needed to do this thing, right? So rest, you can receive messages through their clear knowing, that's one of that's
Absolutely. And clear knowing is one of my gifts. If you listen to my story, that there are these thoughts that just arrive. And it took a long time to, what do I want to say? To accept that they were divine gifts
Mhm.
and to be able to tell
Discern.
them from my small mind kind of thoughts.
Mhm. Yeah, the discernment part, that's a
That's the trickier bit.
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
muscle you flex, because I also have claircognizance and I have clairsentient, which
Yes.
those are my strongest. I believe that we
Mine too. Yes.
really, oh hey,
Well, if you remember, I had my neighbor's kidney backache for
yeah,
days.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yes.
Oh
Welcome
my
to the world of the physical empath.
Oh gosh, those pains though, they sometimes they stay for a little bit, for a couple days, and you're like, ooh,
Well, but you don't have to take them on, and I've learned how to like turn them off and turn them down,
Mhm.
which is a beautiful, beautiful thing to learn.
That's amazing. I would love to get more into that. How now that you have these gifts that came online, because I do believe that a lot of people's gifts are starting to come online now with the shift of, the energetic shift of the universe, of the planet, and everybody's gifts are starting to come online. Some people don't know what direction to go and how to handle this. So how did you start learning to deal with these, or how to control them in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, well, it was desperation and survival, right? Because up to this point, I've had, 45 years of relative peace and quiet. I mean, I've always been one of these people that cries at like the Hallmark commercials, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, I'm definitely an empath in that regard, but this was a whole different level. And it's like I took down that heart wall, and there's this unceasing, unrelenting onslaught of information that you didn't have to deal with before. Up to that point, I'm used to, yeah, there's light that's going to come in my eyes, and there are sounds that come in my ears, and I'll touch things and taste things and all this kind of stuff. But when your additional senses turn on, it's like, whoa, holy buckets. And so I immediately started, I'm a reader. And so the first thing I look for is books. And books were one of the few things that was affordable at that point in our life, right? Because worst case with a book, library card, right?
Yeah.
Free. Okay, that's my price point at this time. And so I was looking around for, what do I do with this? I figured that it was probably some sort of an empathy thing, having done a little scrounging on the internet. And I found an author by the name of Rose Rosetree, who has this wonderful book set called The Empowered Empath. And the first book in that series is a literal workbook. And it takes you through 30 days of different kinds of exercises for controlling how much of that information comes in and how much of it does not come in, and selectively allowing in the information that you want. And so I literally spent the 30 days and did every exercise in that book, and found, I would say, probably 5 or 6 tools in there that really work well for me. But I love that she's got 30, because all of us are wired a tiny bit differently. And the fact that I'm a physical empath and an emotional empath makes me a little slightly different flavor than somebody who's maybe a group energy empath or that sort of thing. So the tools that work for me may or may not work for you, but she's got enough in that book that you will find something that will help you. Because I think a large part of the codependency and the people pleasing that you see in the light worker community, in the empath community, I think comes from the inability to get that distance. I mean, as humans, it's already hard to say no to somebody if they come and ask you for something. But as an empath, not only do you have that hurdle of it's hard to say no, but you also have to deal with their emotional reaction to receiving that answer. And so we tend to become people pleasers, or to avoid having to tell somebody no. We'll just duck them until they figure out I don't want to participate, which are not very adaptive ways to deal in the world. But sometimes feel necessary because we don't have another viable alternative. And so this book offers a whole pile of viable alternatives that will allow an empath like myself to become assertive in the world without having to experience all that backlash, without having to pick up all the crap that people come and try and drop into your field. Because we do tend to be the place where people come because they feel better after they've been with us, because they've left all their garbage with us. And so developing the discernment to know that people are doing that, and learning how to clean your energy out after they've done that, or even to prevent them from doing it in the first place, is super, super helpful tools to have.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm definitely gonna look that book up. You said
Rose Rosetree. Yeah.
Rose Tree.
Yep. First book of the Empowered Empath series. So there are 4 in the series. I haven't read the other 3. I didn't feel the need after the first one.
You got it. Yeah. It's now you're into moving on to other things, but I would love to get that because you said it's a workbook, right?
Yeah, it's a literal workbook, and you can get it physically. You can get it on Kindle. And literally, it's not one of these, I'm going to sit down and read the whole thing. It's like, okay, here you are, day 1, here's your experiment, go do it. It's a little like walking through the Course in Miracles, only it's faster.
Wow.
The Course in Miracles takes 6 months or something.
Longer. Yeah, it takes longer. So what is one tool that you use to clear your energy as if you're going to be around somebody?
Indeed. I'm a healer, and I'm sure quite a few people out there in your listening world are also healers because light workers tend to like that as one of the things that we bring in our missions. And healers have big, sticky Velcro auras. Okay, which is why people like to come be with us when they're in distress because we hold that space. They can drop their shit. They feel better when they leave. And then we've got this gunk in our aura that is Velcro. I mean, we sucked that stuff right off of them. And so, one of the things that I love the best to use when I know I'm going to be out in public or I'm going to be working with like a large group of people at an event or something like that, I work with an aspect of the divine. Okay, there are like 12 divine qualities: victory, grace, mercy, compassion, love, joy, rapture, justice. I don't remember the entire list off the top of my head, but you get the idea. And the one I love to work with is grace. It's kind of like the divine lubricant. It's like this Teflon substance. And so, what I do before I go into an event is I talk to that aspect of God, grace. I invite you into my aura, into my fields to allow me to be of maximum service to the people here and minimum damage to myself. I ask for your protection. I ask for, the stuff that's not mine to, be dropped off the person and recycled into the earth for love and above. I just invite grace to do that for me. And you can do it continuously. You can do it, just for a few minutes, depending on what feels appropriate to you. If you've been picking up shit from people for a long time and having trouble getting rid of it, invite grace in. Grace, please come wash through my aura, take away all this stuff that's not mine. Please recycle it for the highest and best of the world. And you'll be amazed at how much shit that you've been trying to heal wasn't yours.
Wow. Yeah, that's
At
so
least I was floored.
yeah, because you start to, because these things, they're like, it could be just one word that somebody said to you, and then you start repeating it over and over and over and over again, and then it becomes an actual belief of yours at
Yeah,
that.
it's a thought seed. We pick up these thought crystals, these seeds from other people,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you've got one of these sticky auras. And
Yeah.
so you've got
And your
somebody who's
fertile
got,
soil.
yeah, who's got these body image issues or whatever, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm too fat, I don't like that pooch, I don't like that pooch, I'm too fat. And it's like, you're fine. You're just fine. That is not even
Yeah,
your thought.
yeah.
You tell anybody that, they'll look at you and go, no, you're great. Well, I don't know where did that thought come from?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. They're just, yeah. It's like it's definitely not you. And discerning when it's not you and when it is you, whether you have to work on it or not. Like you said, you were working on things that you didn't even know were yours, right?
Yeah, it's like that was my mom's issue. Well, and some of that is, this big sticky empath, but some of it is also my soul contract, right?
Mm,
Because we create a plan before we come here. People have heard of the Akashic records.
mhm,
That's the plans that are completed.
mhm,
Okay, but there's a section of the Akashic records that deals with planning. And each of our souls, our higher selves, have a job on the other side. Mine is actually part of this planning bureau, as it turns out.
ooh,
And so when you create your plan, whatever it's going to be, whether it's unconditional love or knowing what's yours or boundaries or being on the cutting edge or being misunderstood, I mean, there are all kinds of different experiences we sign on for.
mhm,
That vibration gets programmed into your birth name. So the thing that ends up on your birth certificate is quite literally what that is. And so if your parents, for example, had not decided on a name for you when you were born and you were baby O'Shea, for example, okay,
yeah.
um, that's literally your birth name, baby O'Shea. And so then the contracts, the vibrations that came with that are what you're going to live out over the course of your life. I think of it as like the cake of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you take on a married name or a spiritual name or something down the road. This is like the icing that goes on that cake. It changes the experience of those initial set of lessons and gives it a slightly different flavor. Sort of like icing chocolate cake with your typical German chocolate frosting, as opposed to doing a black forest cake with the cherries in the middle and the whipped cream. It's a very different experience of chocolate cake, but they're still both chocolate cake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I segued into that because I have this soul contract experience. I call it the engineer, and it's about life and death and structure, basically. And one of the things that engineers do is they very easily take on other people's stuff. And so I have to watch who I'm in partnership with, who I'm in relationship with, that I don't take on their issues, because this is something I will naturally and spontaneously do because I'm a problem solver, which is one of the things that comes with that particular talent in the soul contract. And so I took on a bunch of my mom's stuff. I took on a bunch of my sister's stuff. I took on a bunch of my dad's stuff in my family of origin. And so once I started running Grace through, it became clear how much of that I had really picked up and brought with me. And I learned something very valuable through that, which is if the shit's not yours, you can't heal it. No. You can only heal your own stuff.
Ain't that a fucking fact? That is for sure, because that is like the dilemma of the empath that causes so much pain for people that are empathic, because they want to help others. They want to see others, see themselves the way that you see them.
Yeah.
And it causes a lot of pain. Yeah.
It really can. And especially if you don't have a way to like turn up and turn down your perception of what they're experiencing with that. It's super hard to live with somebody who's in a pained place. And you want to make it better in self-defense almost. It's back to the people pleasing only on steroids. This is people fixing, right? But the problem is, and the thing that will ruin many relationships is, you can't force somebody to address their issues. You can't fix their issues for them. They have to be good and ready to go do it. And when they are, absolutely, you can support them and assist them in a number of ways. But you can only lead that horse to water. If he's not drinking, he's not drinking.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it has to be internal. They have to do it for themselves. This is how many times did you get advice and you didn't take it, right?
Because not just me, everybody on earth. It's like, no, I'm not ready to hear that. Just go away. Well, and sometimes it's who you hear it from, and sometimes it's the timing that you hear it from. I have they're both friends, family friends, a husband and wife, and they were starting a business together. And I forget what the exact issue was, but she'd been talking to him about this issue in the business over and over and over again. And he would not hear it. He would not hear it. He was not going to do anything about it. And then there was an afternoon, I needed some help stuffing some envelopes or whatever, and he had some time. So he came over and we're sitting stuffing envelopes, shooting the shit. And I brought up the issue again. And I said, since I don't remember the issue, I don't remember what my advice was, but the upshot was he went home and did something about it. And his wife called me later and said, how did you get through to him? I'm like, it wasn't anything special. We talked about it and I said, here's my 2 cents on it. And there you go. So it was the right moment and the right person saying it.
It was divine timing. He was ready to receive.
He was ready to hear it, ready to receive it. And he was unable to receive it from his wife. Yeah. He was able to receive it from me. And there you go.
Yes, 100%. And, a lot of the time, back to the empath thing, a lot of people, they will dump their stuff on you because they know that you're like a healer subconsciously, like energetically.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're very aware. They wouldn't be able to necessarily say it with their conscious mind and their words, but they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely know. And a lot of the time, I feel like I don't like to call them boundaries because I don't like to set walls between people,
Mm.
right? But there are like standards, I guess, that you would have for the conversations that you allow to bring in at certain times, because as an empath, you still have your own shit that you're going through, and
Oh,
sometimes you
yeah.
can't hold the space for somebody, you know?
Absolutely.
And
And you
so
have to be able to share that.
you have
Yeah.
to be able to say, no, sorry, not right now, you know, like
I'm not in a space where
later.
I can support somebody else. I was in that space at the beginning of the year, actually, because I had gotten a virus. In fact, everybody in the household caught the virus. It was not COVID, it was some other mystery virus. But it took like 3 weeks to work its way through. And then dad came down with pneumonia on top of it.
Mm,
And so I'm his primary caretaker now. So
okay.
if he's sick, I'm busy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I went into the eye doctor. I had got a diagnosis of glaucoma, had to have emergency eye surgery. And then the next week, my mother sent me an email saying she'd fallen down and needed a plate put in her leg and was going to have surgery. And so, I mean, until the middle of April, basically, I
Mhm.
was unable to support anybody other than the people I absolutely had to.
Yeah.
And life is sometimes that way.
Mhm.
And so you have to be able to tell people, look, I'm terribly sorry. I love you. I care about you tremendously, but I don't have the bandwidth right now, and I'm terribly sorry.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
you're doing them a service by saying no, because your cup is not full and you can't give from a empty cup
An
or a half
empty
full.
cup. Exactly. Well, and the other thing is that people forget is a lot of times we become kind of crutches for
Mhm.
other people in our world. And I'm not talking about telling your parent who's fallen down the stairs that you're not going to support them through their surgery. I'm talking about you've got this girlfriend who calls you every time something goes south in her life, kind of
Mhm.
situation. Sometimes you have to step back and say, I know you got this, and give them the space to be additionally resourceful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, you show them how they have the tools within them to pull themselves out of that. That's the
Yeah.
healer thing. That's the healer part.
Exactly. Well, and that's the other thing that I had to learn as a healer, right? Because we're taught about healers backwards,
Mhm.
right? We're kind of taught that doctors are healers and you go to the doctor for the healer to fix you, right? This is kind of our understanding of how the healer exchange works.
Mhm.
But the truth of the matter is, the actual healer is not the person we're calling the healer. They're more of a space holder and a guide. The
Mhm.
healer sits inside the person who's coming for the healing. And all you're doing as a quote unquote healer is activating that potentiality in them, giving it a direction, allowing them to see what that place is that has to happen.
Mhm.
They've got everything they need to heal themselves. Sometimes they just need space and a direction.
Yeah.
And that's why we go to a healer. It's not that the healer's going to fix you.
Yeah. Yes, yes, I love that exactly. You're just all you're doing as a healer is turning their head this way, like look there, look there.
look,
That's
look
what you
there,
gotta, yeah.
right there. There's your doorway.
Yeah, yeah, look there. And it comes out of them, you know, as a Reiki practitioner, you know, I see this happen before my eyes, and it's a beautiful thing. And as I mentioned, I went to Joshua Tree this a couple of days ago, and I
Yeah.
just got back, and I did a Reiki healing for a friend of mine. I held space, and today earlier, I had I did meditation. I use meditation as my tool to cleanse my energy, and
And it's a beautiful way to do it. Yes,
oh
absolutely.
my God, chef's kiss. I love meditation. So through this meditation, I just was like sobbing. Like I cried so much this morning, and I feel so much lighter and happy. Look at me, I'm happy, right? But I cried so much, and it was just emotions that I had gotten from him, you know, because he was very emotional, and because I wasn't nothing necessarily to cry about, you know, just a good feeling, I guess. But But yeah, it's these tools are very powerful, and it's necessary to release all that stuff that you may absorb from others.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't even
Because,
know.
well, and it's your responsibility if you're going to be a healer to learn how to get rid of the other person's stuff when they leave your session. Okay. Because if you don't, you're going to schlep that into the next session with
Mhm.
a client who's vulnerable in some other way, who will leave with some mystery issue that, like, I don't know why I suddenly feel like shit about myself. I thought I had that figured out. Well, okay,
Yeah.
you're sometimes you can transfer that kind of stuff as a healer. So it's really important to understand how to turn up and turn down and how to rinse it out of your field, how to release it, how to let it go before you engage with the
Yeah.
next person.
Yeah, and from your space too, because it could be just like lingering,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
it could just be lingering in the corner.
Absolutely. And we want the good energy lingering, not the leftover
Yeah,
crud from the last person.
absolutely. And I want
Yes.
all this good energy lingering. You are such good energy.
Oh,
It's
thank
I
you.
mean, we've had a lovely conversation, and
Yeah, I think we probably went over a little bit, but I
oh,
appreciate you humoring me.
it's yeah, we went over. It doesn't matter. We can go as I wish I could keep talking with you.
I was going to say, break it into 2 sessions. It's all good. We will come back to this conversation next week.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I definitely would love to have you back whenever you are free and want to come back on. Just let me
Fabulous.
know. Just let me know. I'm here with open arms.
I am happy to return in any moment.
Yes, yes, I love it. Before we do close off this amazing podcast session with you, with Zofia Rennea Morales,
Yay.
do you have any other messages for anybody listening, any empaths listening, any healers who have just awakened their gifts?
I guess my message is this. If you are in a difficult spot with your awakening, because it's not the butterflies and unicorns and rainbows that a lot of people make it out to be, that's okay and that's normal. It's normal to feel like you've been melted down and put back together in some strange new pattern. That is an extremely normal experience when you're awakening late in life. If you're suddenly discovering that reality is not what you thought it was up to this point, it's okay. You you do not have to check yourself into a mental hospital. You are fine. And you are not alone. That's part of the reason that I do my podcast. I'm sure it's part of the reason, Luna, you do your podcast, is to show you that you're not alone. There are other people going through this. There are resources out there that you can access with just your library card if you can't afford anything else. And there are people you can talk to about it. Sometimes it's helpful to just know that somebody else had this same weird shit happen to them too. So my words of encouragement are lean into it, relax into it. It's all going to be just fine. And if you need someone to talk to, I have a 20-minute session that I do for free with anyone the first time they enter my world. You can go to bookzofiacoffeechat.com and get on my calendar. That's BOOKZOFIA coffeechat.com. And you can get a little support and a little direction.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much. Everybody make sure to book a session with her if you feel like you need the assistance, you feel aligned, you feel called. I do want to share your social media handles for
Absolutely.
find you. So they can
Yeah.
go to facebook.com/transformation space or your
Mm-hmm.
personal page, which is Zofia Rennea.
Yeah, the
Correct?
ZOFIARENNEA. I know the spelling is a little challenging. So,
Thank you. Thank you for that. And then you're also on YouTube at Transformation Space. So make sure to
yes.
find her there, you guys, and make
Yay.
sure to get a library card.
Absolutely. It's your
Yeah.
ticket to all kinds of amazingness.
Yeah, there's actually lots of free things that you can get with a library card, just saying.
You can learn from some of the foremost experts in the world
Oh
with
my
your
God.
library card. It's
Amazing.
free.
You can travel
No
the
more excuses.
Mhm. No more excuses. Not this year, not ever. Always, always open and available for all the blessings.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Okay, Zofia. Well, I will leave you here and leave everybody listening or watching.
Bye.
Until next time, mucho, mucho love. Ciao. Bye, guys.